Thank you. So, in this roundtable, we will discuss data science for electronic health records. We have a strong panel, and we will discuss different point of view on this issue. I will start with a few words of introduction. Electronic health records nowadays routinely collects large quantities of data in the care process. And in Italy, now we have the National Recovery and Resilience Plan that is financing many projects to introduce electronic medical records in public hospitals. And the project related to Fascicolo Sanitario Elettronico 2.0, so the National Electronic Health Record, where regions and the Italian government are working to achieve an interoperable platform to collect information and documents and to enable the consultation of these documents and data throughout the country. For this discussion, electronic health records are not only the base for collecting and managing clinical information for clinical practice, but also the foundation for clinical research and data science. And so they can facilitate real-world data research. Also, with the address that European Union has defined with electronic health data space, in particular for research use. So we will discuss mainly barriers and challenges for electronic health records and data science with our panelists. We can start with Sabina Nuti, rector at Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, where there is the management and healthcare laboratory, the MES laboratory, who studies performance evaluation of regional healthcare system and healthcare providers, and the management processes and innovation in health and social care. So from your point of view, how can we address better use of electronic health record data to analyze the management issues in our health organization, and how can we use this data to support research in healthcare management?
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today to discuss with you this issue. Yes, my background is management. So first question, why am I here? What can I tell you about this issue? Well, I arranged my agenda to be here today and to give you some of my suggestions, because I think that the topic is really relevant for the future of our healthcare system, of the research. So this connection between data science and electronic health records, it's, I would say, the beginning of a fantastic area where we can use data to improve our health. We feel very good on this issue. We like it. But, we have a but, and this is why I'm here. I think this is just the beginning. From a technical point of view, it seems very easy. and especially for your generation. But practically, is incredible, is really very, very difficult. So when we look at clinical trials, when we look at just the research level, this seems easy to have this type of connection and all the consequences also in the organizing our and planning our healthcare systems and providing care. But then when we are on the field, something is missing. We realize that people still go around with a paper. There's no connection among clinicians and the young generation, especially the young generation. I have, I think at my son and my daughter, they say, how come we are so late in the healthcare system? How come we don't use the smartphone? I heard the impressive presentation of the colleague before. Why it's not inside the organization? Well, I think there are lots of causes, and it's very important to be aware of why it's like that, and so that we can think how to improve. Let's just give an example. Look, Professor Passino, we work on this in a strong way in the last 2 years. Why this is happening? Well, I think lots of causes. First of all, it's a problem of language. It's a problem of language. Who should use these type of tools are person with a lot of experience, clinical experience, physicians that are all old, considering your age. That means the average is people of 50, 60 years old, and they are not used to use this language, and it's a big problem. A language also from a point of view of adopting the same type of language. Every time you use electronic health records, you have to share how to use and what put inside this information. And this is a first big problem, because a special clinicians are used to describe the same phenomenon with his own words. And so you have an incredibly variability, you know, in describing the steps. So we need to put in place a long organizational process to share the language. How you want to describe something that for the clinician it's important, that should be measured, that should be inside these data. And this needs time also because most of the clinicians are used to work alone. And this is something that comes out from education, from organization of the clinical, the organization inside our hospital, inside our facilities, and even worse than primary care, where each doctor, family doctor, it's used to work alone. We understood that this was not very good. We tried to put in place interdisciplinary teams, but it's very difficult to make them work because at the end of the day, the clinician is sure about himself, is very self-referred. So to put in place some trust and the idea that they can get more out of this sharing process of the data needs a lot of time. Most of the time in our healthcare system, what is the position of the health professionals? We agree. It's fantastic. We like that. We like the idea that we can use and this is true, they really think it's a good way. But then, when you have to, I like the very political way you said, yes, it is not a diagnosis, it's assessment. Very good idea. Never try to think to substitute the work of a clinician because you will find that they will be very in a way, very worried. So let's call it assessment. Let's try to put in a simple way in their hands. Let's try to do this. You need a lot of patience, a lot of patience. You said we have to talk a lot with patients, and you put nurses as the first health professional. That's very true. It's the key for the future. But we need to speak a lot and to talk a lot also with clinicians to convince them that these new tools, that these new instruments will not take away power from them. And this needs time. And you need management staff to put in place a process that can help this. And you need time. You need really a lot of time. So I wanted to be here to think about what we can put in place in our organization to help this process. Too often, for example, let's give an example, telemedicine. Telemedicine is in our planning process since 20 years. I look at Emanuele, and I think it's 25 years that we're speaking of telemedicine. And every year comes out a new project. And then you go and see the numbers, and you see 100 patients, 5 clinicians, and the results are really fantastic. And then you're not able to change the system, to pass from the prototype to a large pilot process, and then to hold the system. And why? Even if data are so good, even if you see that they're cost effective, that the outcomes can improve. Why? Because I think we don't give enough attention to all the organizational process. How can we put all the person involved in a comfort zone where they are able to feel that this is a win-win process? And we just can't say it's the best way to do it. It's not enough. It's not enough. So what can we do? I think we need to involve much more patients and citizens, and perhaps we can start from citizens, because I think these type of tools are really great, especially in prevention. And we have to do an alliance with patients and with citizens. I think, now in our media, we find a lot of discussion regarding that the population, citizens, don't trust as much as in the past clinicians and the healthcare system. And so say, why they don't trust it anymore? Well, I think the way our society outside the healthcare system has evolved, it puts in place much more peer-to-peer process. No, let's try to think. I remember some years ago where my daughter started to use BlaBlaCar, and I was saying, how come you trust a person that you don't know and you go in the car with this person? Why don't you go by train? And her answer was, no, I trust because I discuss, I know what other people went on the service, what they say about who drives it, what it says, and I trust the peer-to-peer process, the society process where we have an information and I trust the person before me that used that service, you see? And I think this is a way of thinking, especially of the young generation, that changes. We don't want anymore, especially in prevention, to think about the service that's provided from an owner of the know-how, the health professional, and in a symmetry, the patient that has to follow the line guides that were designed by the health professional. So we need to try a new way. It's true, health professionals have much more know-how than the patients and the population, but we have to put it there in a simple way so that to convince the patient to follow prevention. So perhaps starting with a good alliance on this, we can try to move and change all the healthcare system. So improving this type of alliance with citizens, improve the capacity to work in an interdisciplinary way. Clinicians have to learn to work with us in the management field. He works in my university, so look at how he looks at me. He has to say yes. But also with engineers, with data scientists, and it's really opened the way of thinking. Think about, for example, education. We need to mix classes and to have a common language. Interdisciplinarity means also this. And to help clinicians not to be afraid of measuring. Now, you see, clinicians follow clinical line guides and protocols. And evidence in the clinical science has evolved in an incredible way. We have a number of studies and publications that we never had before. But then when you go and see real-world data, you see that there is an incredible avoidable variation. All health professionals say, I follow clinical line guides. And then when you go and see real data, you find incredible avoidable variation. So there is space there, I think, for data science and electronic health records to close the gap and to help clinicians to think about how they are following these line guides and what is happening on the field. There is a gap. When you look at clinical trials, it's very true in that group of patients, in that situation, in that place. We need this type of information also to close this gap and to give some more support to clinicians to have questions and to understand why then in the implementation phase there is such a difference. So this is the end of my my comments. Just an invitation to work side by side with people that work on the management side or that work in other fields, not just data science. We need to build together a common language that can try and think what can the new technology can give us in improving health, but also thinking together how to put it in place in the real world. We still have a lot to do, and time in the private sector, we say time to market, time to health. We have to make it shorter because the implementation phase is really too long, and I think patients and population deserves results in a quicker way. Thank you.
Thank you. Your short comment connecting the fact that that on the collaboration with clinicians and so on, also the plenary session this morning by the colleague of University of Cambridge underlined this point, and so we have it as a red line in the different part of this discussion. So now Emanuele Lettieri, full professor of healthcare management here at Politecnico di Milano, and Emanuele lead also the Life Science Innovation Observatory at Politecnico di Milano that is monitoring the innovation in clinical research and also how the application of real-world data studies are evolving nowadays in Italy. So, Emanuele, From your point of view, where are the main opportunities and threats regarding real-world data, the use of real-world data, and which is the vision of pharma and medtech companies on these issues, and so how our research ecosystem can really leverage data science and electronic health records.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you for the very kind introduction and also for the very challenging questions. Before trying to address them, let me take a while actually to congratulate Professor Francesca Ieva. Really congratulations, Francesca, for what you've done. Terrific job addressing, organizing such an event. Really full packet. The room is amazing. I also know it's very nice to see how we've been able actually to gather so many top scientists today to discuss about these issues. So congratulations to you, to all your colleagues in the department for what you have done. So it's not easy to actually discuss after Sabina. I will try to do my best to address all the other perspectives from the management side. Well, actually, the advantages and disadvantages, the challenges connected to real-world evidence. Actually, I think that many of the speakers today, also Alicia, actually addressed this point in the previous presentation. And actually in this roundtable, there is not actually the time to really show you a comprehensive view of the pros and the cons. Also because actually I think because of your background of the attendees, that you actually know what are the advantages, the disadvantages, the challenges, and so on. Also Oliver in his presentation addressed part of this issue. So let me try to focus the attention on some elements that are relevant to me. And I would like to have a discussion with you, not during the round table, because actually there are no questions from the audience, such a pity, maybe next time, but at least at the lunchtime, during the lunch break. Well, first point, I actually think that the very obsession from the management science is to understand the difference between efficacy and effectiveness. So I would like to use real-world data actually to understand why efficacy is different from effectiveness. This point has been raised by Alicia in her presentation this morning, very well done, and I fully agree with your perspective. Why? Just to align the language, efficacy are the clinical endpoints in randomized clinical trials, effectiveness are the clinical endpoints in daily practice. And we actually know that efficacy is the upper bound for effectiveness. So we know that in the daily practice, it's very difficult to achieve the same results shown in randomized clinical trials. Why? We actually need to understand why. The reason could be very different. We are going to include different patients with different characteristics. We are going to use different technologies. Hospitals are very different. There is a variation. Technology might be different, competencies might be different, and so on. So we actually need to address this point and to understand what is really happening in real life, and to what extent the treatment is safe to the patients, to the operators, is effective, but it's also cost effective. We actually need to know this. It's a very simple question, but it's the very question, what we are paying for. And are we sure that what we know from science is also real in practice or not? This is the very question to me. And because of your knowledge, because of the data that we are collecting, we have the capacity to answer to this question. This is actually the prelude to personalized care, more personalized, more predictive. We have the possibility to develop digital twins or to emulate results, to simulate results, to anticipate results. But actually, this is the very obsession to me. For sure, there are many other opportunities to support research, to support planning, many other activities. But actually, I invite you to think about this. We actually need to know what is working in real practice and what is not working. Not to exclude, but to adjust, to improve, to change. So we need to learn from practice in order to achieve results that are more adherent to randomized clinical trials. So this is the very first challenge that I actually see. The second is more political. But actually I think that we have the chance actually to have a debate, at least in Europe, should be worldwide, about the ownership of this data. Who is the owner? Do you actually think that they are private goods or public goods? This is the very question we should try to address. Because the general opinion is that they are private goods, and we need to protect them. My personal idea, humble opinion, is that they are public goods. They should be open use, for sure protecting privacy, safety, security of this data, but they are so relevant that we need to share them and to make them open, accessible. For instance, in the European Union, we are trying to debate this point, and to the best of my knowledge, actually the Netherlands is the very country that is trying to address this point, making this data as a public good. So I invite all you, if you are more, even if you are probably more interested to technical issues, to more, let me say, connected solution to statistics, artificial intelligence, and so on, also to participate in this debate and to have your opinion about that, because this is actually the very point. Also, Lisa in her presentation discussed about solutions, the federated option to really get access to this data and so on. So we have many alternatives. So don't be so focused, so narrow in the technical side, but as Sabina told before, try to open your mind to zoom out from the very technical part, and also to understand what is around and what are the big issues that we are discussing as scientific community around the concept of real-world data. It's not just their usage, but also their property and so on. What are actually other challenges? These are the pros. If you want to see some cons, actually they are connected to, and Oliver, you addressed it in your answer to the question you received from the audience, actually the quality of this data. Because I actually think that not all operators are actually very interested to collect high quality data. For many of them, collecting this data is just an administrative burden, is an extra workload. Because actually they do not see the value of this data. And so the quality of this data in many places is very, very low. So it becomes very, very important actually to diffuse a culture of this data and why these data are so relevant and why we are all committed to collect very high quality data. Because we know that the analysis of the quality of the data is the very preliminary activity in any data science activity or research. And unfortunately, the large majority of the data are actually biased. And this is actually the very risk that we will use. Alicia, I'm going to use your terminology, garbage in, garbage out. And I feel that there is a lot of garbage worldwide. Actually, there was a statement from the past editor of the British Medical Journal, Professor Smith, telling that the 85% of our evidence is biased. 85% of our evidence is biased. So actually we are deciding on evidence that is not real evidence. It's something very different. But let me try to also see the perspective, was the second question addressed by Paolo, about what is the vision or the position of the pharmaceutical and biomedical companies, also medtech companies. Savasandir, it's very clear, also Oliver, from your presentation, actually that they are very interested. They see the value. They also created organizational roles inside the organization to address this challenge. What are the very challenges that they see nowadays? First, to get access to this data. To get this data. How they can get this data? Because the access to this data is not easy. For many reasons. The first is that, probably Chiara will address this issue later, unfortunately, significant parts of our hospital are still collecting this data on a paper-based mode. So the diffusion of the electronic health records, medical records, is not so high worldwide. And so we miss the opportunity to have this data. But even if we are collecting this data, getting access to this data is not simple, is not easy, for many, many reasons. But if these assets are not, if these data are really close somewhere, we lose the opportunity actually to support science, to develop new technologies, and so on. Also another real issue is about, again, the quality of this data. So for them, it's very important to get access to very high quality data. Another point probably is too much in this audience. I would like to really provoke this audience is we should also think about how to valorize this data. And when I say valorize, I mean what is the value in euros? What is the value of a data set of clinical data? Because we should try to think about the opportunity to create a market where these data are traded. For sure, according to some laws, under some rules and so on, but we should create such market. So what is actually the way to give a price to this data? To the best of my knowledge, but we'll ask to Sabina at lunchtime, so she has time actually to prepare the answer, actually to the best of my knowledge, there are no methods in the literature so far. We have no clear idea. The very answer, if you ask us to the artificial intelligence tools that we prefer the most, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and so on, the very answer is it depends, case by case. Actually, we need a methodology. What is the value of these data sets? And how can we valorize them in order to support exchanges between hospitals and pharmaceutical, biomedical companies, and so on. And in my dreams, also the single patient is allowed to sell his or her data. This could be a very interesting business model, a different opportunity. There will be speakers later. They could agree or disagree to this statement. It's very strong. The idea of today was be white and black. And around the table, you must be white and black. Reality is by definition gray. So I know that is a very strong position, mine. But actually, let's think about this. The capability also for patients actually to sell their data because their data are relevant and could be useful for some purposes and so on. About competencies, Sabina already told many things. The very first thing is the language. We need a common language. But actually, Olivier and Alicia addressed it before, the importance to collaborate. The very key point is that data scientists and clinicians should be able to work together. And to me, working together means that they are able to shape relevant questions. What are the relevant questions? Actually, my feeling is that in many cases, we have plenty of data, but we actually do not have any question, significant question. We are just running the tools, the algorithms, trying to find something that is interesting, statistically significant, but is not a very relevant question that is relevant for the society, is relevant for the clinicians, is relevant for the patients. It actually is important that clinicians and data scientists try to draft together, to craft together the research questions and by definition also the research design. What are the methodologies actually to address and provide an answer to these questions? This is a very key point. As a researcher at Politecnico, the very obsession are relevant questions. Bring me a very important question. And then I will find the data, the methodology to answer. But the starting point are relevant questions. And data scientists alone can't define relevant questions. And probably physicians alone are not able to actually define a research question that is researchable with the data that are available. So it is important to have this common language. The final point, I will conclude my comments, is actually very important also to be able to communicate your results. Because sometimes actually your results are too complicated. And let me say, the recipients of your data, of your results, can't actually understand them. And it becomes very complicated to trust them because they don't get the methodology that is behind. So it's very important to be able to communicate to decision makers at the very different levels. Could be, the clinicians, could be the patients, could be the hospital managers, could be the regulators, could be actually the payers, could be many different actually recipients. But it's very important to be able to communicate the results. to avoid the barrier where the results are not clear, are not understood. For instance, also in your presentation, Oliver, you really spend time to address and explain the data visualization that you use to represent the data and to make them clearly accessible also to not experts in your field. So actually, I think that it's very important also for you to really think about data visualization and how to make your results digestible, snackable, also for decision makers. And let me be rude in what I'm going to tell. The final goal of your research is not another publication. Please do another publication. This will be important for your academic career, will improve your H index, your citation score, everything you want in the academic life, but you're not going to have an impact. The very impact is when your results enter in the clinical practice and someone is interested to understand them. Not only physicians, but also other recipients. It could be hospital managers, could be directors of departments, could be actually family doctors, could be actually payers or insurance companies, and so on. So really try to invest time also in making your results interesting for someone. And good luck for your job, because actually we need to connect better science, management, and practice. And really, I wish you all the best for your professional career, and also, for really bring your science to real life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emanuele. And I will only connect the relevance of the definition of the problem that was also one of the first slides this morning. And we reconnect this content. Going to Chiara Sgarbossa, head of the Digital Healthcare Observatory at the School of Management, Politecnico, that is monitoring the evolution of electronic health record and electronic medical records in Italy. So, Chiara, which is the state of the art of the electronic medical record inside hospitals? And if you can share with us the current state of fascicolo sanitario elettronico 2.0 and ecosistema dati sanitari, mainly also for research purposes, and how we connect this state of the art to the European level, so to the European healthcare data space.
Okay, thank you very much, Paolo. Also, thank you to Francesca and Eva for the invitation, and hello to everybody. I presented the Observatory on Digital Health, who is one of the over 50 observatories and groups research at the Department of Management Engineering at Politecnico di Milano. We were born in 2007, so we are conducting now the 18th edition of the research, and every year we try to understand which is the level of diffusion of digital health in Italy, and which are the barriers and the action to develop a more digital-oriented healthcare. In the last years, we saw that the recovery plan has brought a lot of innovation in the Italian context, and to also to improve digital innovation. In particular, the electronic and medical record, as Emanuele said before, is not so diffused in the hospitals in Italy. And we saw that about the 61% of specialists has used electronic and medical records. So we have a lot of specialists that work in a paper-based hospital. And if we see the situation among nurses, we saw that only 38% of nurses has used electronic and medical records. So we have a lot of space of improving the diffusion of this solution, and the recovery plan has invested a lot of money in digitalizing hospitals. So in these 2 years, in the last 2 years, all the hospitals, thanks to the fundings from the recovery plan, started to invest on this topic. So we are seeing in these months the real changes in electronic medical record. In general, in the last years, we saw that the electronic medical record was at a basic level because, for example, only 21% of the companies, of the hospitals that answer to our surveys revealed that, for example, they use also clinical decision support system connected to the electronic medical record. In general, the electronic medical record is used to collect data from the patient to do, for example, the medical history or to have the medical diary. So the basic functions of the electronic medical record. So in this case, we have a lot of money that are being invested in electronic medical record, but also 1.38 billion euros to improve the infrastructure of the elettronica e-record, so the fascicolo sanitario elettronico 2.0, that is a project, it's a very important project in Italy, that want to be the only service, the only platform that could be useful for patients, but also for doctors to see the medical history of patients during the past years. In this case, we saw that electronic health record that was born more than 10 years ago, so it's so like telemedicine, it's not a new issue, but it was born more than 10 years ago. In many cases, the electronic record in each region doesn't contain documents, digital documents of the patients. So one of the main issue of the recovery plan was to feed this electronic record with digital documents from hospitals, but also from pharmacies and laboratories to collect data about the patient. So in this, in the last months, it was very important for the hospital to feed the electronic record with documents that were in standards. For example, CD82, that is the standard that has to be used to define these documents. And the possibility to have digital documents in the electronic record gives us also the opportunity to create a new ecosystem that is very new ecosystem, that is the health data ecosystem that was established on the 5th of March of this year. So it's a very new project. And this project can be useful for researchers because it enables the opportunity to centralize all the data about the patients that arise from the electronic record. So all the system, basing from the electronic medical record to the electronic record, arrives to health data ecosystem, and it allows to use this data both for research objectives, but also for governance at an Italian level. So it's a very important tool that is important for care, but also for research and governance. This new ecosystem is very coherent with the European data space that was born many years ago as an idea and is starting to be a very important project at European level, and has two main objectives. The first one is the use of the primary use of data collected in the European data space. So the possibility, for example, for a Spanish tourist that has a problem in Italy to access his data also in Italy, because there are interoperability between the electronic record among different countries, but also the secondary users. So the possibility to have data from different countries that are data, for example, coming from the ecosistema dati sanitari, so the ecosystem, health data ecosystem, to do research, to do, for example, research question, and to ask to the European data space to have access to some databases. So this is a very important opportunity because also for the researchers, but we need to complete all the digitalization at hospital level, regional level, and Italian level. So the challenges that I see in this case are not so few, because we have, for example, the challenge of interoperability. Many systems at Italian level cannot speak one to each other, so we have to respect also the interoperability standards. For example, in our case, in the electronic record, the standard is the FHIR standard, but also standard concerning the data. So, for example, we spoke about CDA2 before, and also the semantic harmonization of all the data, because we cannot use different sources that cannot be analyzed in the same way. Secondly, there's a concern about privacy, because we know that privacy is the first challenge when we speak with hospitals, but also with the researchers. So the new ecosystem should guarantee privacy of data, and in this case, for example, the data ecosystem at the Italian level will ask the patient to give a different consent to the use of different data for care, but also research. And the last challenge is the capacity and the infrastructures that we use to collect all this data, because for example, in Italy, we have smaller than bigger hospitals in general. We have to improve the capacity of collecting this data at different level of institutions, and it's a very big concern too. To sum up, I think that thanks also to the Italian recovery plan, the electronic medical record will become a very important and strategic tool for doctors, not only to collect information, but to use this data information to improve care of the patients. The two projects at the national level, the electronic record and the health data ecosystem, will be very important both for care and also research, because it will be the first time that we will have data collected in one ecosystem. So data now are not collected at all, but also in different systems that cannot speak each other. And the last opportunity is the European data space that will enable research and also care in different countries without boundaries. So nowadays we have boundaries also between regions, but in the next years we hope to have no boundaries also at European level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chiara, for sharing this roadmap from paper document to electronic data as a basic foundation to then work on this data. And now I will ask to Claudio Passino, full professor of cardiology at Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna and head of clinical research unit at Fondazione Monasterio Hospital, to share his point of view. As head of the clinical research unit at Fondazione Monasterio, you have a broad experience of leveraging clinical data for research in cardiology. So my questions are, from your point of view, which are the main solutions in Italian hospital research center to enhance the use of electronic record, electronic health record data for research, which is your experience at Fondazione Monasterio, and also which role do you see for data standards? Many of them are described also by Chiara, but for example, we can think also of OMOP as a data standard to leverage the usage of electronic health record data for research.
Thank you, Francesco, for the invitation to this meeting. I really appreciate this morning all the lectures. It was very, very interesting for me, and good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, before addressing your questions, I want to make a comment on the previous speakers. In particular, I agree with Professor Lettieri that when dealing with data, the clinical data in particular, it's very important, the question, because if, by experience, if you leave yourself engineering informatics alone, you produce sometimes very good things, but sometimes useless things. So it's very important that physicians, engineering, informaticians work together to solve questions. And the question comes from people that are actually dealing with patients. So nurses, clinicians, caregivers, and patients themselves. So keep this in mind when you work on this data. So I fully agree with Professor Lettieri on this topic. The second comment is on the privacy issue. That is actually one of the main barriers for use of data for any algorithm that you are going to develop in the future. It's a barrier because in Italy, particularly in Italy, we are particularly restrictive in the use of data, sometimes over-restrictive. I believe that, again, I agree with Professor Lettieri, that some of the clinical data coming from patients, of course, after anonymization, pseudo-anonymization, are a public good, and so need to be shared for improved health and improve assistance to our patients. So these are, I strongly believe, but last Friday I have a meeting with our data processing officer who does not think as I think. So this will take a lot of time to be a question that we need a lot of time to be solved. But everybody needs to raise his or her hands and pose the question, why cannot I use this data? Because there are techniques, and you learn me how to teach me how to anonymize data. I understood what is the key index after some years, how to protect data, the privacy of the patient. Last times I spoke with a DPO, I also understood that imaging cannot be never anonymized in any case. So this is another problem, because from a theoretical point of view, from an imaging of the body of the patient, you can, I don't know how, violate the privacy of the patient. So, but in any case, let's go to the question that the colleague asked me to answer. I would like to start which are the solutions? Let's start from the barriers. Who are the barriers to the use of the data from research? The first barrier is the fact that, as Dr. Sgarbossa mentioned, there are a lot of hospitals in Italy, at least, but also worldwide, that are not using electronic medical record for collecting data. They are still using paper, and so from paper, it's kind of hard to extract information. There are techniques that I understood exist to retrieve data from scanning the paper, but of course it's a cumbersome activity. For sure, the recovery plan will help, and is going to help, and is actually helping in the digital transition of electronic medical records. The Fascicolo Sanitario 2.0 is from the architectural point of view, is a very intelligent way of sharing data. I want to see how it will really be implemented in real life, because if you go on the Fascicolo Sanitario, your Fascicolo Sanitario, the information is present for some areas, but completely absent for others. And the organization of the information within the Fascicolo Sanitario is quite difficult to be accessed by the physicians. So there is some work to do on that point, but the architecture of the system is very intelligent with different possibility of feeding the data into the fascicolo sanitario. And also hospitals that have electronic medical record, the majority of them do not have all the data digitalized. And this is another problem, because if you want to create an algorithm based on several data, and some of the data are present and the other are lacking, it's quite difficult then to apply in the real practice your algorithm. So an effort in trying to put everything within the same system, all data need to be done in the next future. And again, some regions, as Tuscany region, but also Lombardy region is doing the same thing, is try to promote a unique electronic medical record, at least for the hospitals, the public hospitals. And Tuscany is quite forward in this way, because in the next year, within the 2026, the whole region, with the exception of a couple of hospitals, will use the same electronic medical record system for all patients that are admitted to the hospital or are followed up in the outpatient clinic. So this, of course, will help in harmonization of data collection and in the possibility to use this data for research. How to boost the digital transition. I think that we need to start from the so-called best practice. There are some hospitals in Italy that since many years are actually used to collect data and to use data for research, respecting the privacy of this data. So, of course, nowadays, if you want to use clinical data for validate your algorithm, you need to go to the ethical committee approval and you need to ask the patient the consent to the use of this data. But besides this problem that I hope in the future will be solved, this best practice should be considered as an element to be followed. And to I make some example. The Mario Negri institution that you all know from since more than 20 years is collecting data coming from all the intensive care unit to use this data for monitoring the quality of the intensive care unit around Italy. In our institution, we are using a registry for the rare disease of Tuscany, where all the rare diseases are collected and all the information from this patient is actually used for epidemiological reasons and for research purposes. Going into the how we do exactly in my institution, we are quite lucky because we are using an electronic medical record since 1997. So I arrived in that hospital when I just finished my cardiology specialty in 1998, sorry, and I started working directly on digital on this digital tool. So for me, it's quite impossible, incredible to visit a patient, to assist a patient with a paper. We do not use paper. So this, of course, helped us to follow better our patient, first of all, because our first aim is the care of patient, but also helped us to understand the importance of the use of these data that are collected. And so, together with the informaticians that actually developed the electronic medical record together with physicians and nurses, we learned how to use this data, how to correctly collect this data. And since some years, what we are doing was to try to structure some information. It's impossible to ask physicians to structure completely the information. So we need you with natural language processing, with LLM, all the tools that are available nowadays to structure all the information. But we started with the main and the pivotal information that need to be structured. So there are some items that the physician need to structure. Otherwise, they cannot go on the collection of the history of the patient, on the closing the discharge letter. So by doing this, we were able to tag some feature of the patient in order to create some cohort of patients that are of interest for research purposes. And by doing this, we are nowadays very easily able to retrieve data from patients that are affected by a particular disease or by a particular feature. What are doing our engineering and informaticians in Fondazione Monasterio? The next step that we are trying to do is to create a data lake where all this information is duplicated from what is the clinical database, and that can be anonymized and used for analysis and deep learning analysis. And we are asked from many of you for access to this data, and we are very open to do this together, as happened with Francesca and other groups, because we need to, starting from the raw data, to structure the data, to organize the data in order to be used for clinical purposes. Final question was dealing with the standardization of information. This is fundamental. As I was telling you, some of the information can be standardized by the physician himself, but it's very hard because I can call the same thing in different way, differently from my colleague. We try to uniform the name of something, but it's very difficult. And we can do it in my hospital, but if we go in another hospital, it's not easy to use the same language. So there are tools that can be used to standardize after the data is collected. And this is, of course, a very important, because the interoperability, which is the key word, of course, it's important, the functional interoperability, but the semantic interoperability, of course, is important as well. So to conclude my speech, I believe that, again, it's very important, the collaboration between different people with different backgrounds, engineering, health managing expert, clinician, nurses, to fill the gap that Professor Nuti was mentioning at the beginning between the research and the clinical practice. And when you develop a new tool, remember always that beside publish the result on a good paper that, of course, is a part of the research, remember to try to implement your algorithm, your innovation within the tools that are every day used by the health provider. Otherwise, it will remain a good paper, but will not go into the practice, which is, I think, the goal when you deal with clinical issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and also for the refer to the best practice, the role in our environment, healthcare environment in Italy. And then we will go to Sandro Girolami, Foreign Affairs and Research and Development Manager at Meteda. In your role, you have a strong experience on research and development built on data collected in clinical centers with a focus on diabetology. And so I want to ask you, how can an industry partner address the use of common data models in electronic health records to share data for research, and how privacy that we have mentioned before can be an opportunity and not also a barrier on this roadmap. And one last question on how can data science for electronic health record evolve as an enabler of value production in Italy?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm lucky because I had the possibility to hear a lot of very good speech. So I'm trying to focus on what we said, starting from a success story. So we started as Meteda with a product in EMR in diabetes in early 2000. So it's more than 20 years that we started using this tool to collect data. What's happened now? What we do is we collaborate with the Scientific Society, and IMD, this is Scientific Society, is publishing every year an initiative that is the Annali, in which they collect clinical data and publish the indicators they decide to analyze. So basically, just doing these activities, collecting data and measuring the activities, they increase the quality of care in a very high percentage. So what does it mean? It does mean that just collecting data in a digital way and measuring this data, you are able to increase the quality of care of the patient. It's amazing. So what we need to do? Well, first of all, I will say the standardization is a key point. We said today we collect data, but which kind of data? If we write is not enough. What we did at that time was to work with the Scientific Society to define how to describe the clinical data. We are not speaking only about lab exam, for example, cholesterol or blood glucose. We are also speaking about drugs, but we have an Italian national database to use it. But we don't have a classification, or let's say we have still now a classification, but it's from late 90s. Can you imagine now how you can describe, how you can analyze the clinical data of the population with something that was designed 30 years ago for administrative reason, epidemiological reason, not for clinical reason? So that's the point. Lucky us, it seems this is solved because we are moving to ICD-10 after all these years. Now what we need to do? We have the Fascicolo Sanitario Elettronico 2.0. Is well structured? Yes. Technically speaking, maybe it's perfect. What is missing? We are not using the same language. We use the same technique. So engineers, you know, you can do whatever you want. We have the hub, we have whatever the technique to send data, to describe data, but we don't have the semantic information shared with all of us. And when we speak about semantic, it means 90% of the work that the doctor does, because when he do the diagnosis, when he describes what the patient has, he uses this information that is codified, but is not used as a standard. So this is the first point. Standardization, using standards like ICD-10, SNOMED, LOINC, to describe all the information, because this brings us to the quality of the data. Without quality, you cannot run model or whatever. This is, from a clinical point of view, this increased the clinical decision support and patient engagement, because when you standardize information, you can better explain people how to use it, how to understand this data. We need to leverage the regulatory point in which we need to certify the product that we realize as a software, as a medical device. And we need to collaborate with the scientific society and institution to do that. Mainly today, what we need to do is to work with MOH, Agenas, that is the, let's say, the strong arm to do this stuff, to be able to bring on the market all these things, all this possibility to better work with the data. And to do that, Professor Nuti has to leave, but she said, doctors are not able to do that, doctors are not willing to do that because it's too complex, they don't have time, all these things. Yes, if we think about SNOMED, that is a standard, has more than 300 items to describe the illness, I agree with that. But what we, as an engineer and in the industry, we have to do is to create the tools to help the doctor and the nurse to use exactly the value that he needs to do in a specific context. I mean, if I'm speaking about diabetes in this moment, we have different comorbidities. When I need to describe a problem with the eye, it makes no sense to have 300,000 items to look at. I have 10, 20, maybe 50, no more. So it's much more easy if we create the tool that is focused on what the doctor is looking at this particular moment and not looking at everything. So we need to create the tool that addresses the real needs of the doctor. This is Michaela this morning said very strongly this thing. So we need to work with the needs and not with what the engineer thinks to be a good algorithm to develop. And then about GDPR. Well, I used to say that GDPR is the process from the jungle through the civil war. I mean, without the GDPR, no one trusts the other. No one, you are fearing. You don't know what you can do. I don't want to give the data to do you or to that because I don't know what you're doing with this. Basically, we need to understand that GDPR should work in a way that the citizen is owning the data for the public goods. So I agree with the professor when we say this is so important that without this data, we cannot have in the future a national healthcare system as we have today. It's impossible. We have not enough resources to do that. We need to use the data to increase the way we are able to predict, to care, and to valorize this information. How? Well, first of all, engineers, you need to think about privacy by design. What means? When you start doing something, you need to think about privacy from the beginning. So then you can use the data. You can build the trust with the data. We can use data ethically so that we can continue to do that. And only doing this, we can then share the data also at the international level with the European Health Data Space. So it's very important that we think about GDPR not as a burden, but as a strong possibility to do something together. And how we can conclude with what data science can do? Well, data science can do a lot, as you can see today. Everyone today can see from the AI what is possible to do. And we can use all this system to predict, to analyze, to create clinical decision support tool, to do screening. Just imagine the imaging we use today. If you run the AI on the imaging, you can see something that a normal visit cannot do, because you need much more time to do that. We don't have resources to analyze all the data to do screening. So we need this tool to do screening. We need to improve population health with data science. We can empower patients in using the data they are collecting, not only, let's say, standardized data or clinical proven data from medical device, but also from lifestyle, like the band, the phone, because we can also how can I say, prevent activities. You know, 60% of chronic disease is created by wrong lifestyle. It means physical activity and food intake. With the tool that we have on our pocket, we can prevent this. We can do a lot of this stuff. So we need to go on this direction. And the industry can use this data. So how to monetize? The industry can use this, needs to use this data to update, to enhance, to go further on what we already are able to do. But to do that, we need rules. We need clear rules to do that. And we need to fight with institutions to create very clear rule to use data and to use AI, because at the end of the day, we did a lot of AI solution, but the doctors say, well, but when the AI system is wrong, who is responsible for that? There is no rule today. No one say, is the company, is the doctor, is whatever, is the national health system. No one's know. And as industry, we cannot invest on this solution if we don't know which are the rules we can play.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that in this discussion we have covered the main barriers and challenges, and surely we have shared the context in Italy on electronic medical records, electronic health records, and so we have seen the state of the art of these enablers to data science. So we have not in this roundtable discussed on use case of data science, but of enablers that are relevant to so that we can do data science on this data. We have shared also the importance of collaboration with management, informatics, and clinical roles, and also some elements to build a roadmap to value. I don't know if we can manage some questions or we go for the break.
I think we are almost on lunchtime, but a quick round of questions, if any, are more than welcome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for the very interesting discussion. You mentioned the Fascicolo 2.0, very interesting opportunity. I was wondering, as you said, how will the data be managed in this project? Like, will they be held by the government, by some private agencies, or the single hospitals will own them and act on them as they wish? Or maybe it's a bit long question, but just in a bit. Thank you.
Chiara, voi?
I try to answer. So the electronic record data will be in each region. So the projects are at regional level. So each region has data on their electronic record, and physicians that take care about the patient could enter in this data. The use of this data, for example, for research use, is connected to health data ecosystem, because here we can have anonymized data. Instead, in the electronic record, they are connected to the single patients. And so this new space that is a very new topic, so we are studying it, and we are deepening the characteristics in these weeks. Will enable the use of data also for other uses that are not connected only to the care of the patient. And for example, also for policy making or other uses. And so the decree of the Ministry of Health define all the different uses of health data ecosystem, and the different consent that the patient should give for the use of their data. I know that also there is the possibility to have notification from the patient when his data, where data are used. So it's a very new project, so we are studying it and to understand also the maybe sometimes it's not very easy to understand all the topics of the use of data in this case, but we hope that it could be a very big opportunity also for data scientists and researchers.
Thank you, Chiara.
Sorry. I also have a couple of questions. The first one is how can we address the data fragmentation issues so that patients and also healthcare providers have a comprehensive view of their medical history? And also the second question, just for curiosity, do you think that we are really ready to jump into this digitalization and also innovation? Because I mean, I just think about my medical doctor when I ask for a receipt and I cannot go physically and I ask, please, can you send me by email every time? She's never happy. So yeah, just to curiosity. Thank you.
Against the law sending a prescription by email. That's the problem. But officially okay. It's against the law using WhatsApp, but everything
no, by mail, I mean. Yeah. So if this is a problem, how, I mean, I guess that we are not ready to jump into this.
That was just a joke, but it's it's true. The fascicolo should be, from a theoretical point, should be the solution, because actually the prescription could go directly, actually in Tuscany goes directly into the fascicolo sanitario. So the patient can actually download the prescription by the fascicolo sanitario. And so this morning I was on this desk just to answer the second question. Again, then I leave the floor to the other colleagues. I was working on a patient because through the VPN I can connect to the electronic medical record in Pisa. So I think physicians, I'm not completely agree with, now is not director, so I can speak against director. I don't completely agree with Sabina on the fact that the physicians are not ready to the digital transition, because of course when I see when a new physician comes to my hospital and he or she is used to work on paper, then he starts using the electronic health record. By 1 week, he cannot go back to the paper, because the advantage of having an electronic medical record is a lot so wide that the physician learn very quickly on how to manage the thing. So I think we are ready, but we need to be put on the right way, let's say.
We are ready. The problem is we cannot wait the solution. There are many solutions. And to implement the digital world, you need to go step by step. When we started with diabetes, we didn't start where we are today. We started from point 0 to point 1, then point 2, 3, and so on. What you should do as citizen is to push, and push. Ask. Because what happens is this: if there is the demand, then you have someone that try to give an answer. If there is no demand, then it's difficult to do this. I hope the fascicolo sanitario will solve it. I hope very, very strongly, because this is the only way we can change the world, the healthcare system. But we need also to change the organization. This is something no one is thinking about. We cannot continue to use the same healthcare system from using a traditional method and using a digital method. We need to start thinking on something different. I cannot use a WhatsApp. I cannot use email to send prescription because it's not certified, it's not secure. But there are tools to do that. It's possible to use them. So it's not, again, it's not a technical problem. It's a regulation problem. And sometimes people is just behind a finger to try not to use something. But we have everything. So I invite you to push, because you are young and you can change what we were not able to do.
Thank you. So I want to thank you all the panelists, to thank you, Francesca, for the organization of this very interesting workshop, and all of you.
Thank you very much.